MSNBC is getting roasted, my friends, because on their program, they compared Trump's rallies to a Nazi rally and even showed images of the Nazi rally, to which Elon Musk says MSNBC is the utter scum of the earth for comparing Trump rally to Nazi rally. And I'm loving this right now. AOC has responded to Tony Hinchcliffe, and she's just like, you're, being offensive with red meat racism, and I gotcha. And I think it's funny because AOC has no choice but to join the anti-comedy side because she has to. I mean, the Democrats' talking point has been chosen. The rally is racist. The rally is Hitler, blah, blah, blah. And now AOC is between a rock and a hard place on this one. Well, Elon Musk has chimed in, and we'll jump to the AOC point later, which is kind of funny. On Sunday, as former President Donald Trump's triumphant rally at Madison Square Garden, New York was going on, an MSNBC host compared the event to the infamous February 1939 Nazi rally at the same venue. MSNBC's Jonathan Capehart started his diatribe by quoting Trump's former chief of staff, General John Kelly, having described Trump as a fascist. What I love about this is, it's like it's a guy who got fired. You fire somebody, they're going to be mad at you. What are you going to do? MSNBC's Jonathan Capehart started his diatribe by quoting Trump as calling him a fascist. Then he launched into his vituperative tirade, ignoring the fact that it is American leftists who routinely launch into violence against conservatives willing to stand and be counted. Quote, that jamboree happening right now, you see it there on your screen in that place, is particularly chilling. Because in 1939, more than 20,000 supporters of a different fascist leader, Adolf... It's just so funny at this point. Adolf Hitler packed the garden for a so-called pro-America rally, a rally where speakers voiced anti-Semitic rhetoric from a stage draped with Nazi banners. When a Jewish protester rushed the stage, the AP reported, instantly dozens or more stormtroopers set upon him, knocking him down and beating him while he held his head with his arms. Most of his clothing was torn from his body. Later, he was booked for disorderly conduct. Fascinatingly, at this Nazi rally, they would call it, there were Israeli flags being flown. How about that? Now, against the backdrop of history, Donald Trump, the man who has threatened to use the military against his opponents, he hasn't. He has called enemies from within, he hasn't. Who has threatened to use the troops to quell what he says are lawless cities, he hasn't. And to use those troops to carry out mass deportations of immigrants, illegal immigrants, is once again turning Madison Square Garden into a staging ground for extremism. It's just the craziest thing to me. It just doesn't work anymore, okay? It doesn't work anymore. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not trying to say this to humble brag or anything. Yesterday, I produced a video Sunday morning. It has currently about, 680,000 views, breaking down the Kamala Harris campaign and a headline from the Daily Mail about the Democratic doom, they called it. This is key demo. Okay, the people who watch, most of you, you know how old you are. You are key demographic individuals. When you turn on CNN and you turn on MSNBC, they're preaching to the elderly. And I mean no disrespect to the elderly, but they are just not going to be relevant for much longer and they already aren't. My point is simply this. The majority of working Americans at this point do not live in this insane reality where you can just lie about these things anymore. Hence, Donald Trump going on the Joe Rogan podcast and going on Theo Von. Donald Trump needs to go on Kill Tony, but he had Tony Hinchcliffe at Madison Square Garden, so that's great. Now, let me break this down. Trump never threatened to use the military against his opponents. That's an absurdity they made up. He's never called them enemies from within. He was referring to illegal immigrants, largely. He may have made a reference to criminals in government who have committed crimes, but I'm pretty sure when he said enemies within, he was in the context of illegal immigrants who have come to this country and are destroying it. Using troops to carry out mass deportations of immigrants, illegal immigrant criminals, indeed. But of course, they can't help themselves.
But that jamboree happening right now, you see it there on your screen, in that place is particularly chilling because in 1939,
look at this, they're
more
showing
than 20,000 supporters of a different fascist leader, Adolf Hitler, packed the garden for a so-called pro-America rally. A rally where speakers voiced anti-Semitic rhetoric from a stage draped with Nazi banners.
That's kind of wild, too, that happened in America.
The stage, the Associated Press reported, quote, instantly, a dozen or more stormtroopers.
Okay, blah, blah, blah. We read this already. I'll have you know, my friends, there was another fascist rally. In 1992, as you heard me say in the first segment, Democrats held their convention at Madison Square Garden. They were Nazis. Oh, come on. Shut up. It's just so, ugh. X owner and Tesla CEO Elon Musk had his own succinct comment on MSNBC's incendiary rhetoric, writing on X, wow, MSNBC is utter scum of the earth. What happened? What happened to these networks? Their brains have turned to jello. Look, let me put it this way, my friends. There are a lot of channels that will lie for views. I am not interested in any such thing. And for this, people get mad at me quite a bit. They say, Tim, you're wrong about this, that, or otherwise. Well, I'm going to tell you what I think and why I think it and what I know and why I think I know it. I'm not going to pander to you because it'll get me views. I'm not going to be like, look, it's funny because we had the Cartier family on the Culture War podcast, which was a great show. For those that aren't familiar, they're just young black men. They're athletes. Smart young guys, and they react to content, and they're Trump supporters. And, what's fascinating is these are guys who, after just watching what's going on, they were reacting to music, they started to learn the truth. Now, the funny thing is they get called grifters. They say, you guys are grifters. You're grifting. And I'm just like, guys, let me tell you. They keep trying to make this claim. They always have done this, that by talking about politics in this way, you are grifting. I'll tell you, dude, I wish I could do a video game stream. Look, there's a period for a couple months I was doing that live stream in the morning following the RNC. I think YouTube punishes you if you do it that way. So, and it is harder to do now I'm trying to do more shows with the weekends as well. So I stopped, but let me tell you, I'm live streaming and I have 35,000 viewers watching. And I'm like, look at that. And then some dude playing League of Legends has 150,000. Grifting? Are you kidding me? I wish I could get 150K. Grifting would be me being like, I've decided I won't do politics anymore because it's divisive and I'm going to go play video games because there's a much bigger market cap for playing League of Legends. I'm just not really interested in it. But let me tell you about MSNBC. They ain't going to be getting any League of Legends. It's a political channel. They have only one choice. And I'll tell you how this all goes down. CNN and MSNBC. They used to be kind of moderate. MSNBC had Tucker Carlson on it at one point. How about that? What happens is when Trump begins to run, they loved him. This is what Joe Rogan pointed out on The View. Donald Trump comes out and they're like, you're great. You're not even that conservative. You're kind of a moderate. And then he started winning and they're like, you're Hitler. They loved him. He went on, he went on the show where they messed up his hair. It was like Jimmy Fallon or something. I can't remember. I think it was Fallon. Was it Fallon? And then they had to scrub these because they were like, no, we've got to say that Trump is Hitler. He's not allowed to win. All of these things. They pretended like they liked him. Or I should say they did like him until they realized he may actually win and beat Hillary Clinton. And then they just turned. Now, what we're seeing with MSNBC is they started to build up this audience. They excised their more moderate-leaning individuals. CNN and MSNBC decided to chase after the Trump is bad narrative because it was making them money and getting them views. See, they did this at an institutional level. For me, I'm a guy. I read a news story, I'll tell you what I think. Sometimes I'll be critical of Trump, but largely like the guy, so it's not usually that much. But there are a lot of big channels that just pander and they will say whatever. And maybe they genuinely believe that Trump can do no wrong. Fine, they get way more views than I do. Me, I'll tell you what I think. I'm an individual. I make individual choices. At CNN, you had all of the staff marching in lockstep. At MSNBC, all of the staff marching in lockstep. When the boss said, this makes money, so say Trump is bad, they said, yes, sir. And they still do. But here's the problem. They have excised their audience. Now you've got CNN desperately trying to get people back. CNN's trying to bring in, they got Ryan James Gerdusky, they got Scott Jennings. They are like, we need to bring back moderate and conservative leaning individuals to watch this program. We cannot just chase Orange Man bad. What happens when Trump leaves? Well, MSNBC, being the crackpots they are, they've given up. So I don't know how they recover from this ever. They're going to have to keep one-upping the rhetoric until the point where it's just a ridiculous fan fiction show about how Hitler has been brought back from the grave. Because sooner or later, they're going to run out of people to call Hitler. And so they're going to have to just be like, he's been cloned. Or he used Nazi moon science to prolong his life and is 400 years old or whatever it may be, whatever year it may be. The Daily Wire goes on. The notion of Trump being a fascist leader of Nazis is ludicrous, considering Trump as president was the strongest supporter of the state of Israel of any American president in Israel's history. Ironically, in 1924, the Democratic National Convention was also held at Madison Square Garden, and much of the controversy revolved around whether or not to denounce the racist Ku Klux Klan. And both of the Democratic National Conventions that nominated Jimmy Carter, who hated Israel so much, he drafted the strategy and wording for a speech arch-terrorist Yasser Arafat would deliver, as Carter's biographer Douglas Brinkley noted, were held in Madison Square Garden. It's funny. At the rally, I don't even know if you can see it, but someone was flying an Israeli flag, and they're like, they're Nazis. Yeah, no, I don't think. You know what I really love, too, is the conflation between fascism and Nazism, because these people don't know anything about World War II history or early 1900s. They don't realize that they're two different distinct things. Nazism and fascism certainly worked together, but they were not the same thing. They use them interchangeably. Now, we as Americans typically use fascism just to represent the idea of authoritarianism or totalitarianism. But there is a reality to what fascism is. It depends on who you ask. Some may just say it basically today just means authoritarian control, but it's largely rooted in traditional values. Communism was still authoritarianism, but it was largely rooted in progressive values. The communists wanted to destroy the old ways of thinking. The fascists wanted to maintain them with an iron fist. And hence, here we go today. I do think it's funny, though. MSNBC is getting dragged, not just by Elon, by other outlets, because they literally ran this chyron. Trump's MSG rally comes 85 years after pro-Nazi rally at famed arena. Yeah, and also, as they mentioned, the same amount of time as Democrats and their clan. Democrats held a rally there in 1992. It's just a big New York place to do events. Donald Trump's making a play for New York, though. I think Trump really wants to see a tremendous gain in New York City, and I think he will. I don't believe he can win. And it's not just because of support. It's because of the infrastructure of the voting mechanisms in the deep blue areas. I think Republicans, and to an extent Democrats, they've long made massive mistakes in ignoring solid areas. Republicans don't want to go anywhere near solid blue areas because they're like, the cost for the reward is minimal, and we can win these other areas that will allow us to gain control in the House or otherwise. If you abandon a deep blue area as a Republican, well, then don't be surprised if you can never win it again. And this is hyperpolarization. There is a mandate. There is a need for you to go to D plus 25 districts and heavily campaign as a Republican to start to break. I put it this way. We know in certain, and this is what Trump is doing. We know that there's certain areas that are swing districts and the Republicans can try and win them. But I say this, target New York City and weaken them at their base. Make influential New Yorkers see an opportunity in joining a Trump rally and what that gets for you. And then what happens is key influencers in places like New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Seattle, etc., may start coming out in favor of the Republicans. And when that happens, it's a tidal wave. That is to say, New York has a lot of creatives. There are comedians, there are podcasters, Los Angeles, Austin. These are blue areas. Like Joe Rogan's in Austin. He moved there to get away from California. Trump should be, and Republicans should be, Trump is, go to these deep blue areas, convince many people, here's opportunity. How would you like to speak in front of 20,000 people at Madison Square Garden, all cheering your name? Well, Trump is the ticket. You then get someone like Tony Hinchcliffe, and now, what's that? Influential individuals with large podcasts and followings are going to say, hey, I like the guy. He gives me opportunity. Then in blue cities like New York and LA, where these influencers may live, people are going to be like, what am I supposed to say? Do I support or oppose Trump? The regular run-of-the-mill people. But when you've got influencers saying, I like Trump and I'm going to speak at his rally, regular people will say, okay, it's not so bad to like either. And that's where you start to erode the Democrats' heavy base of support. Now, I think I got this tweet here from AOC that I want to highlight too, because there's someone, this event is hot, by the way, very hot. So Tony Hinchcliffe, of course, stated, I read this in the previous segment, these people have no sense of humor. What wild that a vice presidential candidate would take time out of his busy schedule to analyze a joke taken out of context to make it seem racist. I love Puerto Rico and vacation there. I made fun of everyone. Watch the whole set. And then he says, I'm a comedian, Tim. Might be time to change your tampon. Haha. Well, I'll be honest with you guys. I do think that Tony's statement here is indicative of some kind of, when he made the joke, there was some booing or some like, ooh, like whatever you'd call that, and jeering, I guess. And so it's clear that the joke didn't land as well as he wanted to. And there's concern from even some Republicans that it may be bad for Donald Trump. Yeah, fair point. I don't know. It's a tough spot to be in. Tony's a comedian asked to do a political event, and these are not as easy to do. But I think he did a great job as a comedian. Now, in this statement, when he says, I love Puerto Rico and I made fun of everybody, that to me feels kind of defensive. I'm not trying to be disrespectful to Tony, but it feels like he's trying to point out like, hey, look, man, I don't think there's anything wrong with being defensive. So AOC says, can't get over this dude telling someone else to change tampons when he's the one ishing bricks in his Depends after realizing opening for a Trump rally and feeding red meat racism alongside a throng of other bigots to a frothing crowd does unironically make you one of them. I don't think AOC realizes this. She's on the other side of comedy. And Kill Tony has one of the largest live audiences. They premiere the show. So my understanding is that they film it on Mondays and then they hold it for a week and then they premiere it the next week. So it's premiered live and it gets a massive audience once a week. Huge show. Kill Tony's wildly popular and it's massively exploding. That's why Tony Hinchcliffe was speaking at this event, because he's popular. Now, as I stated in the previous segment, I got to say AOC, Dave Chappelle did a comedy special and he made fun of Asian people. He did. And I still think Dave Chappelle is very, very funny. I don't know that he's the smartest political guy. He doesn't need to be. He's a comedian. He's very funny and he's very smart. He's very successful. He's the GOAT. So they call him the greatest of all time in comedy. I mean, seriously, Dave Chappelle will go down in history as a legend of comedy for being one of the funniest and smartest guys there is. And he said some political statements I don't agree with. That's fine. Whatever. He made fun of Candace Owens, and I think she said it's an honor to be made fun of by Dave Chappelle. He's a comedian. We don't take him that seriously. And I don't mean to say like he's not allowed to have opinions and we mock his ideas. No, I'm saying like you roll with the punches. It's not the end of the world. It's a comedian making fun of you. That's it. AOC. Tony Hinchcliffe made jokes. It's the least worrying thing I've ever seen. In fact, it's not even particularly consequential. And here she is on the other side of comedy. Heavens me, I can't imagine what George Carlin would say right now. George Carlin, who famously in the early 90s had a comedy set where he said every racial slur one could think of. And then he ended it by calling Richard Pryor and Eddie Murphy the N-word. Wow, that would not fly today. And George Carlin said, I don't actually think of them that way. And I don't mean anything by it. It's comedy. It's not the words. It's the person behind the words. And he was correct. He's correct then. He's correct now. Tony Hinchcliffe is not a bad guy. He is not a racist. He does not hate Puerto Rico. He made a joke. The words are meaningless. The joke is, and it's really funny because I don't need to point it out to you, but it was the subversion of expectation. That is, Tony Hinchcliffe said there's a giant floating island of garbage, which we all know is the Pacific Gyre, or there's an Atlantic one too, that's swirling around in a massive, it's disgusting. But then he subverts expectation by saying, I think it's called Puerto Rico. Ha ha! Everyone knows Puerto Rico's not a floating island of garbage. And then a redheaded libertarian gets credit for this one. She says, this is wrong. Puerto Rico is not a floating island of garbage. It was formed from tectonic activity. It is a grounded island of garbage, indeed. You're allowed to make jokes. And we know that when you make jokes, and no one needs to hear this, but we know that when you make jokes, you're not trying to actually disparage people. It's the wildest thing. But you know what? Let AOC and the rest of them be on the other side of reason. I can't believe that we're actually looking at this. It's kind of funny. AOC wants to be the unreasonable person. MSNBC wants to be unreasonable, where they're basically taking the most extreme position imaginable. When you have Joe Rogan and the media attacks him, but he's the biggest podcast in the world, what do you think that means? Look, I'm going to put it this way. I need you all to go vote. Not just me. You need me to go vote. We need each other. Everybody go vote. I don't care where you live. I don't care if it's California. I don't care. Go vote. Oh, but it's a blue state. They're going to win. I don't care. Go vote. Yeah, but I live in a red state. We're going to win it. No, go vote. Trump needs to win the popular vote. This is the point. AOC and MSNBC are on the wrong side of history, and that's their line. They love to scream to the high heavens. People don't think Trump's rally is a Nazi rally. People like Tony Hinchcliffe, and they like jokes. Okay? And now let's send that message. Everyone vote, because Trump needs to get a popular vote victory. You all need to vote. Because when those numbers come back in on election day, and they say not only does Trump have the edge in several swing states, he's winning the popular vote by a large margin, mail-in votes will not overcome that difference. Trump has won handily That's the narrative we need next Tuesday. That come midnight or 2 a.m. or whatever, the media says across the board, yeah, there are still mail-in votes that haven't been counted, but it will not overcome Trump's victory. So there is nothing Kamala can do to win at this point. Not only will Trump win handily with no court cases, the Democrats will have no leg to stand on to challenge it. They'll say, but the 14th Amendment, it's like, yeah, well, literally everybody voted for the guy. He needs to win the Senate. He needs to win the House. That means everyone go vote, especially if you're in blue areas. Flip those blue districts red. Look, AOC's district has something like 200,000 Republicans living in it. If every one of them voted, she would lose. For real. I'm going to pull this up because this one matters. AOC Ballotpedia. I'm going to show you how many votes she got in her last election. And I'm going to show you why if everyone just went and vote, we could fix this thing. Take a look at this. In the primary, it was only 20,000 votes. That's crazy. In 2022, in the general election, AOC only got 82,000 votes in a district of 775,000 people. That's it. She got like just north of 10% of the voting population. Now, to be fair, there's illegal immigrants. They can't vote. But look at this. Tina Forte got 31,935. If every single Republican in AOC's district voted for the Republican candidate, AOC loses, and a solid blue district that no one would ever see coming turns Republican. Go vote. The message we want to send is that we reject your ideology, your lack of humor, and your extreme BS screaming Nazi every 5 seconds. So please, go vote. I'll wrap it up there. Next segment's coming up a little bit later today. Hang around. We'll see you then. Follow me on X and Instagram at Timcast. Share the show with everyone you know. Become a member at timcast.com. Leave us a good review on the audio podcast if you're listening, and we'll see you on the next segment.